another one of the ones that Dave Kinney, big finish for Dave Kinney. At one time, Gary thought this was going to be a parts car, but it ran so good they decided that they were going to turn it into what you see there, a rolling showpiece. We have several, couple guests here, past president of AOAI and author of many books on Avanti, John Hall, and his wife Cindy back there, the better half. He tries to keep him on the straight and narrow, but I think it doesn't work so well.
I know how to use my leg very well.
Anyway, without too much further ado, I'd also like to thank all our board members. If you'll just raise your hand. Al Bissell, your newsletter editor. And I think that newsletter is what brings a lot of people in. Because
very well done. Yes.
Thank you.
Very well done.
everybody enjoys it. Dennis Adams,
Here.
Portland area. Mary West, back there. Steve Dowling, right there. Bob Bryant, another one of your board members. And Warren Cortese.
Cortese. Close enough.
Anyway, without too much further ado, I'll turn this over to Al, and he can start his presentation.
Where's my audio-visual
Engineer.
engineer? Yes. Senior Vice President of Engineering.
Yeah.
You mentioned about the board members and about some of the things that I do. The fact of the matter is the chapter wouldn't be anything without the contribution of, number one, the board members, and number two, our membership in general. We are the fastest growing chapter in the country, and there's a reason for that. One of the reasons is that man right there, Lou Cody. He's very modest, but the fact of the matter is he works very hard all year round to bring people to the club. If you go to the Greenwood Car Show, if you go to Cruising to Colby, you'll see him out there as an ambassador of goodwill. Long after I've petered out and don't want to talk about Avantis anymore, or the fact that they weren't made in Canada, he's still going. God bless him. Dennis is our membership secretary, very important. There are many chapters that are not in compliance. Dennis keeps us in compliance.
All I know how to do is run an Excel spreadsheet.
I don't want to minimize that. In other words, everyone has to be a member of AOAI before they can be a member of the chapter. There are insurance issues involved, and it's very important that we comply. I don't know how to create a spreadsheet. Dennis works hard to do that for us. That's very important. All of our other board members have contributed articles to the magazine. Without that, the magazine becomes the Al Basil Avanti story, and nobody wants to hear that after a while. So you need people bringing new material to the chapter. Gary Johnson, who we're delighted has become active in the club, has been a great help to me personally. I just bought another car, and as you're going to see, there isn't too much about Avantis that he doesn't know. So what we're going to start with is a visual aid to bring back into perspective. There are a couple of new people here that were asking me questions about Avantis. This is one of the high-tech pieces from the Avanti factory. They actually used this to bond two of the panels together. I bought this in South Bend about, I would say, 30 years ago. So if you think about how cars are made, and I know I have a vision of General Motors where you have, hundreds of cars coming off the assembly line in a day. At the Avanti factory, they were using things like this to bond pieces of fiberglass together. They were sanding everything by hand. The Avanti factory was a dirty and dusty place, despite Sherwood Pickburn's attempts to clean it up. It was very archaic. you're going to see some pictures of how they put the cars together, using dollies to manually push the cars from station to station. Block and tackle to lower the, you're laughing, but it's true, to lower the body onto the frame. And what's important about that, you need to understand the history of how the car came to be, how it was made, how it was marketed, and how it was sold. Okay? Very important to understand what goes into these cars. My audio-visual vice president was asking me some questions about when you're restoring a car, how important is it to have the details right? And I said, well, it's up to what you want to do with the car. If all you want to do, not if all you want to do, but if your goal is to make it drivable the way a modern car is, you can do that. And there are people, you know, that put the Woodward brakes on it and they soup it up and they do all sorts of things. If that's what you want to do, you can do that. However, I believe the value of these cars is not so much in a car that isn't driven, but it's a car that is restored to the way it came from the factory. Now that could have been 20 years ago. The paint can be peeling off. But if the nuts and bolts are correct, those are the cars that are going to be worth the money, in my opinion. That doesn't mean you can't do it the way you want to do it, but I think that's where the value is going to be. That's where the fun is. I mean, you have a car and you can say 50 years ago, this is the way that car came off the assembly line. I think there's something to be said for that. So what I'd like to do, you know, to understand a little bit about how the car was created is show you a short video clip. Now, there was no way I thought this was going to work, but this gentleman made it work.
Turn the lights off or not?
No, I don't think we need it. Let's see.